Hey guys, so I'm going to show you how to draw text to a Pygame window in a moment. But first I just want to talk about a problem that you could be having with drawing polygons, especially if they're filled in. So the first thing that I want to show you is I want to show you the window that I'm drawing. And you can see I've got some colors set up. I've got the size of the window, which is 400 by 400. And I'm setting my display to be that size. My caption at the top is going to be drawing text. Then I've got my loop set up so that if I click in the X in the top right corner, the program will close. And by the way, I recommend setting up a template Python file. So just have a Python file that's got this code in it, and whenever you want to make a new program using Pygame, what you can do then is copy and paste that file, or just copy and paste into a blank one, so that you can always just have this all set up and ready to go for you whenever you want to work with Pygame. That way you don't have to type this out every single time. So here's the window. You see it's just 400 by 400. It's a pretty small window. And when I click X, it'll close. So I've copied and pasted in two polygons right here. You can see them right there, and I've just commented them out for a moment. And there's only one difference between them. And the difference is I've swapped 2 points around. So in our window, what I'm doing is I'm drawing a polygon that is 100 in and 100 down, and I'm just drawing a square there. I know I could do that with drawing a rectangle, but you'll see why I'm picking polygon in a moment. So I'm drawing a polygon, and I want to draw it just like this, a nice square, and fill it in. And let's say that I want to fill it in blue. So I'm going to draw the first one, and I'm going to run it. And you can see that is not a nice square. So what's going on here? Well, let's look over here at our code for a moment. So what's happening is I'm drawing my first point at 100, 100, which is right here. My second point is 300, 300. So my second point is down over here. My third point is 100, 300. So 100 in, 300 down. So I drew this dot, then it went to this dot, then it went to this dot. And you can see my last point is 300, 100. So 300 over, 100 down, that's this one. So I drew this dot, then this one, then this one, then this one, and then I set my width to 0, so I said fill it all in. Well, because it drew it like this, it filled in the parts that should be filled in. But that's not what I wanted, right? My points are out of order. What I should do is start at this dot, and then either go down and around like this, or start at this dot and go down and around like this. So you just got to make sure that your points are in the right order when you draw a polygon. And to show you that that's true, you can see these points are all exactly the same, except this 100, 300 is swapped with this one, and this one is swapped with that one. So I've only moved the order of 2 points, and you can see that I've got exactly what I want. So the next thing that I want to show you is I want to show you how to draw with text to a window. And the way that we do that, it actually takes 3 steps. The first step is we need to come up with a font that we're going to use. The next step is we need to come up with a picture that we made out of that font. And the picture, you can sort of think of it as a stamp. So we're going to make a stamp, and we're going to stamp that to the screen. Well, what kind of letters do we want to use for that stamp? And lastly, what we need to do is actually stamp it to the screen. So step number 1, pick a font. Step number 2, make a stamp out of it. And step number 3, actually stamp the window. So step number 1, we can make a variable called font. And if we're going to have multiple fonts in our program, we would have different variable names for each of the different kinds of fonts that we're using. And the code is pygame.font with a capital F. And then for right now, we're going to put none, and then we're going to put the size. And I'm going to pick a random size for right now. Let's just say 25, size 25. And one mistake I see that I've already made is this none has to be a capital N. Okay, so don't worry about that for right now. We're just saying use whatever font that Python wants to use by default right now. So just use the default font built into Python. Okay, after we've declared our font, we need to build the stamp using that font. So I'm going to call my stamp text because I want to put text on the screen. And so the way we do that is we go text equals font.render. And so we're going to, the reason that this font is picked right here is we use the variable called font. If we had font2, then we would say font2.render. But since we're just saying font, we're going font.render, so in other words, make it into a stamp. What text do we want to make into the stamp? Well, I'm just going to I guess, put my name on the screen, and then comma. So font.render, and by the way, you notice sometimes this comes up, right? So what kind of text do we want? We want Mr. Pollock, and then a comma, so that fills in this text spot. After the comma, do we want it anti-aliased? In other words, do we want the edges nice and smoothly curved for us? Sure, we do. So we're going to put true for that. What color do we want our text to be? Well, we've got a black background, so I'm going to go with red. Remember, I already declared what red is up at the top of the program earlier. And finally, the background, we're just not going to include that. And if we run this, nothing's going to happen, right? Nothing's happening at all. And that's because we made our stamp, but we haven't actually stamped our window with it yet. So we have to say window dot, and the reason I'm saying window is because window is the name of the surface that we created. So we're going to say window dot blit, which you can just think means stamp. What do we want to stamp to the screen? We want to stamp our stamp called text. And where do we want to stamp it to? So the top left corner of our stamp, where is that going to be on the screen? So if I put 0, 0, our text is going to be starting in the top left corner of the screen. I'm going to put 100, 100, and all that means is 100 over and 100 down is where the top left corner of our stamp is going to be. So if I run this, you can see 100 over and 100 down, that's where the top left corner of our stamp is, and then it puts the stamp right there, sort of like filling in a rectangle with text. And if we want to make that bigger, we can change this 25 into 45, let's say. And you can see the text is quite a bit bigger. Now there's a couple things that's not very good about this so far. And the first thing is we don't need to make this new font over and over and over again. Right now it's in a while loop, so we're making this font over and over again. We don't need to do that. We just need to do it once at the start of our program. So I'm going to move this font up here before the while loop. So we're just going to make this font once. And we may need to render this text over and over again, because what if we wanted to say something like score? So let's say we had in our program, we had some sort of variable called score, and our score is equal to 100. So instead of saying Mr. Pollock, we could say something like our score, and we want to print the score to the screen, and we want to do that in the top left corner. So we'll do that at 0, 0. And how are we going to do that? So right now if we run this, all it says is score, and we want to put that number right there. But we can't use a print statement. So we need to add this score into our stamp called text. And so if you were to put score like this, it's just going to literally print the word score, and you can see it does that. We don't want that. We want to put its value. Well, in print statements, usually we would just go comma, score, but the problem is, and I'll show you, it's not working, right? It's giving us an error. And if I double click on this, the error that it says is font.render score true red. It says it's a type error. It's an invalid foreground argument. Well, what's going on here? All it's really saying is this is in place of the true right here. So the second comma is talking about whether you want it anti-aliased or not. Well, score isn't telling you whether you want it anti-aliased or not. So we can't do that. What we have to do is concatenate these two strings. In other words, add these two strings together. But remember, score is not a string right now. It's an integer. So if I try this, again, I'm going to get an error. It says you can't convert an integer into a string just randomly like that. So I have to put this score into a string, and the way we do that is str. It means take your number and convert it into a string. So if I run it one more time, you can see score is 100, and that works pretty good. Now what if you just don't like the font? Well, we can fix that. That's no problem. In the spot right here where it says none, what we're going to do is we're going to put quotation marks, and we're going to tell Python where to look for a new font. But first, let's go find that font. So what you need to do is you need to open up your computer and go look at your C drive. And on your C drive, there's a folder called Windows, and you go in there, and in your Windows folder, there's a folder called Fonts. So we go in there. And here is a huge list of fonts, and you can see there's lots and lots of them. Some of them look like there's multiple ones here. This one looks like there's only one. If you click on the multiple ones, it takes you inside, and you can see this one is ultra bold, and this one's condensed ultra bold, so that's how they're a little bit different. I'm just going to pick one of these kind of at random, and I think that I have a bit of a space game maybe, and so I would like it if score was printed in these letters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to click on properties. And in this properties, you can see this name. This is the name for that font right there. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go copy, or you can go Control C. And then I'm going to go back into my game, and I'm going to paste that right in there. And now looking at this for one more moment, you can see it says it's a .ttf file. So I need to put .ttf. Now unfortunately Python doesn't know where to find that font though. I went to the C drive, Windows, Fonts, and then found that font file, but Python doesn't know where to go. So we need to tell it. We need to say, Python, go look on the C drive, and I'm going to do a /. Where on the C drive do we want to look? Well, we want to look in the folder called Windows. And where inside that Windows folder do we want to look? We want to look in the folder called Fonts. And inside that Fonts folder, there's this one right here. Let's run this again. And you can see we've got this nice font instead.